Good day everyone, and welcome back to the studio for another day, another paint sesh. We're going to continue with this polar bear today. So we're going to continue tackling the face and get as far as I can. I have some other paint jobs that I want to start. I always tend to run a few projects at a time, especially with oil, because sometimes there's a drying process and I don't like to get held up. So I usually have a few projects planned. So I will continue this, and then I will be stretching some new canvas on some old stretchers that I have so that I can start my next pieces. So let's dive right in. So starting from where we left off, I wanted to continue just working on the face here and the head, and then we'll get to the water later. I'm gonna grab my handy sketch. And we're gonna start straight in with the darks, or the warm dark. So I'm mixing right here burnt sienna. Oh, you guys can see this now. This is a better angle. Okay, burnt sienna, white, and black. And there are some pretty dark areas. And actually, because I mixed the medium W in here, and it sat overnight in a humid environment, my paint is moving really nicely. And as you can see, I otherwise don't really add a lot of stuff into my paints. I kind of like to keep things fairly simple when it comes to mediums. And you know, I've got my basic traced, so I traced using my projector from my sketch onto my canvas. So I've got my sort of basic traced lines. Enough detail that I need, but I'm not like overkilling. This is where having some drawing skills can come in very handy, because even if you trace, by the time you get all the paint down, you have a lot of opportunity to lose the lines and kind of lose your trace marks. So having some drawing skills will definitely help you to complete these paintings a little better. It will also help you sort of come up with and execute interesting concepts in the first place. And again, I'm just searching all over for where this color might show up. Probably in front of my GoPro. I'm gonna have to watch out for all my cameras. It's all new for me filming like this. This gets cooler up in here, so I'm gonna watch out for this a little bit. Oops, grabbed all of my paint there. I didn't need all of it. This kind of lightens up in here, but I know because it's oil paint, I can lay in some darks and then blend between them. Alright, so I'm gonna grab a little bit lighter color here, a little bit warmer. Actually, I need a little bit more color in this. So I'm using burnt sienna white with a touch of black in there. Some of these areas here, hi puppy, are gonna be too desaturated for what I want in the end. So I can go back in with some glaze over the top just to sort of help bring that really rich saturation up. Rosie, nice and puppy. You're such a good girl. And I'm adding just a little bit of light to this by adding some white in here. It's actually supposed to be a little bit cooler. I'm just going to drop some warm in there for now, but I'm going to have to add some more black to this to cool it off a little bit. Again, up here in the ear too. So because I'm just tackling the warms right now, I'm going to be careful where I put them. If you want a really pure saturation, you go with pure color out of the tube. So right now it's pure, almost pure burnt sienna. But I will say that it's not opaque, so I'm going to still see my lines through it. So that's why I prefer to add a bit of white to it to make it more saturated, or sorry, more opaque, but the saturation goes. So that's why I have to then go in and saturate it after with glazes. And those are done at the end when the painting's dry enough, sort of like touch dry. dripping wet polar bear fur. And see, it's so easy with oils to just blend the wet paint on the canvas. This is something you can't do with acrylic, and this is why I sometimes switch mediums. Depending on what I'm doing, sometimes I know I want a really hard edge, so I'll choose acrylic. But when I want something that's a little bit softer and more blended, then I'll go to oil paint. So I'm going to bring some more lights into here, and actually this is where I'm going to have to add some Naples yellow, so I need to be a little bit careful. So I can actually add this little bit into the shadow part of the light, and then for the highlight I'm going to add more white and some Naples yellow to warm it up even further. Trying to pay attention to where my values are. Alright, so time for some warmer paint, so some Naples yellow and titanium white. And this is kind of a cool version because I had some black left in my brush, but that's okay because some of this is cooler. And actually that even seems too warm in sections, so I'm gonna watch what I'm doing here. Okay, I think this color is good for maybe down in here. And because I painted very thickly, my paint is still wet from yesterday. So I'm going to take advantage of that by picking some of it up to move it. However, I'm going to have to go back after and just sort of strengthen that line because it's a very sharp edge here. But I can use the fact that it'll blend together right now to my advantage. I'm going to add a little bit of the shadow over here. And a little bit lighter in here, just to help give some of these furs shape as they overlap. Guys, like, I never thought I'd be painting like this, to be honest with you. I was always such a detail painter, and it came essentially out of fear. I was trying to control everything, and I don't think it was helping my paintings in the long run. They were looking too rigid and too much like photographs. I was getting the comment always that people would sort of just scroll by my works because they just thought that they were, you know, nice photographs that someone took on a vacation or a phone or whatever. And that's not really what I was going for. I do still like to do high realism with my pet portraits, just because, you know, that is somebody's furry loved one. And as a pet owner, I feel like you want sort of a realistic memory of your pet after they've passed. So when I do Rosie's portrait or portraits also, I will be doing more of a realistic style, just for that really solid memory piece. I have not decided which image I'm using yet for hers, or even at what age. There's some really goofy swimming photos where she's got her life jacket and her eyes are huge and her stick is in her mouth. And I think that's definitely going to be one portrait that I do. But the next one I think is going to be a little bit more studio vibe. Just so it's a little bit more serious. You know, I was like spending all this time painting pets and animals because I love them. And then for the rest of my work, I was doing landscape because I love landscape. But then I thought I should try to work on some like wildlife portrait, or yeah, paintings, portraits. In that sort of more painterly style that I was trying to develop for my landscapes. So that's where we're at right now, and I'm really having fun with it. Like, I really find that this has helped me really loosen up as an artist, and it's helping my painting for landscape also. And I will say that things really changed for me when I got my tablet, because I started using Procreate, and I downloaded all the brushes because, you know, I couldn't figure out what brush I really liked. I had been using my tablet before, and the Wacom and the tablet just worked differently. And I wasn't getting the same sort of mark making or results that I had been getting with my Wacom. And then so I just switched back to a couple of the standard brushes, the calligraphy brush, and then sometimes like some oil blenders. And I found just doing that big switch and working in that new way kind of really helped to break me out of old habits. And the way that the screen is so tactile, and the way that the calligraphy brush is so hard edged and kind of mimics like acrylic paint strokes, because you can't blend them, it's all very hard edged. It helped me stylize my acrylic works a little bit more. So I would draw everything out, like get my references together and then draw out my composition. And it was all like really hard edged. And then I found that really, really helped to change sort of the way I was painting also. Because then you're also working from like an already stylized reference. Because I drew it in a stylized way with my Wacom, or not my Wacom, with my iPad. So yeah, definitely like continue experimenting, because sometimes when we're uncomfortable in what we're doing that we actually have sort of the biggest gains. I'm gonna move, oh here I can actually add, well this is cooler, this is still coming down this way. Actually, I'm gonna bring this up here. So I need to watch my warm cool. I'm starting to be too warm overall. And then as I turn up into here, it's still warm, but there's sections in here that are still cooler. So I'm adding some blue to my mix there so that I can get some of these cooler little wispy hairs that are a little bit more into shadow and coming this way. And I may come over and tighten up these strokes later, I'll see. I don't want this to be an overworked painting by any means. So I'll see how much retouch I want to do at the end of the day. I'm trying to stop myself from overworking. It's another habit that I'm trying to break as an artist. Oil painting doesn't need to be complicated or complex. I find it's usually the mediums that scare people and the mixes. You don't need them, actually. Like I'm using just straight oil paint right now. There's a bit of medium W in there, but there's not much else in there. There's a bit of water from my palette because I wet the Stay Wet sponge basically before I started working. But other than that, I'm just gooping on thick, fairly thick oil paint. And I'm not really mixing anything in there. When it comes time to glazing, or it comes time to glaze, I will add some likely sapphire oil or some glazing medium, water-soluble glazing medium. But other than that, there's not much else in here. Okay, I'm starting to overwork that. It's starting to get fuzzy, which is not what I want. So I'm going to stop there. This needs to go a bit darker. Under the little orbital bone there. Following up the line of the mouth here, it becomes covered in fur a little bit, but we still see it popping out. On my other camera. I'm probably going to go in and relook at my references for that eye. I didn't draw it super precisely. Hey guys, so I'm back from my break, so we're going to continue on the face. I have lost my GoPro battery. I'm just getting used to all of this technology to try to bring you guys the best video content that I can. It's quite a learning curve. So yeah, it's off charging, so I'm going to try to make sure to stay out of the way of the camera view for you. But yeah, let's jump back in and continue with this monster. Also, I made myself a copy. So I was continuing over here where I've got some like highlights that sort of go from the cooler side into the warmer side, and I'm highlighting the curve of his sort of cheek bone area here. Actually what I'm doing right now is just kind of removing paint off my brush. And just letting the brush strokes kind of create the impression of fur clumps. Hello, puppy. Gotta go close the door. Rosie here is my little shadow. Follows me everywhere. No complaints here. I'm mixing up a little bit more cooler green tones to sort of start tackling against some of these areas. And I do need to put some more white on my palette. I do notice that I go through a lot more paint in oils than acrylics. I'm not sure why that is. Maybe I'm just enjoying painting thicker. With acrylic you add a lot more water to thin them down, or other mediums. So I notice that I do use larger quantities of paint, and they are more expensive. So Potentially, if you're looking for your ideal medium, you could do acrylic instead of oil if cost is an issue. However, you can also, I could have also done most of this painting in acrylic first, and then gone over the top with the oil for those strokes and for that look that I want. Either way, it would work, but obviously, I mean, if you're doing that way, if you're going acrylic and then oil, for cost reasons, you're gonna have to buy twice as many paint tubes, whereas if you're just going oil or acrylic, you just have to buy the paints once. But long term, if you're using acrylic and then oil, you're saving money down the line. So that's something just to mull over while you're like thinking about how to paint or approach things for your various concerns. But that said, I'm just gonna put a whole huge dollop of oil paint onto my palette here. And I'm going to mix into these cooler colors that I have. Still kind of grayish, but I want to have sort of some in-between tones here. This is still kind of warm. There are some warmths coming into here though, so I don't think it's the end of the world. I'm just going to drag some of this color up here, just to get some sort of first strokes happening. And up here needs to go much lighter, like much, much lighter. Actually, in here I can add this because I noticed some sort of taupey mid-tone colors that are a bit warm, and then it cools down again into more of a gray. But I will add this sort of slightly warmer color here. Alright, so lighter, and to the yellows. There's a little bit of black in my brush still, which is fine with me because it's just going to sort of cool everything down a little tiny bit. I'm not going pure white here. Pure white is for the end where I want my, like in here area, this strong light hitting. So I'm going to save those pure whites right till the end. But I do need to go lighter in here. And it's going to cool off again slightly in those highlights, those white highlights. And titanium white is a cool color, so I can just use the coolness of that color against this more yellow white to achieve that temperature switch. This is going to be the part that takes a little bit longer because it's the detail part. When I get into the water area, there's sort of just large areas of blended color. So I kind of did this on purpose because I want the polar bear to be the focus. So that means that I can put more of the detail in his face and then sort of soften the detail in the rest of the painting so that he really stands out. So there's always, in composition, there's also a contrast of detail that you can use to help lead where people look in a painting. I still see some of my acrylic marker coming through here, but I'm going to go over with some thicker paint on some of these areas that are sort of more sculptural in his face. So I will address that later. I'm just making a picture. It's kind of useless, actually. I don't really need to be doing that right now. So I just added a bit more white to that, and there's a little bit of black coming into it, which is fine because it's going to slightly cool it down from that warm and also make sort of a transition highlight into my main highlight here. I'm actually leaving some of the blue coming through on this one. It's just helping to cool the whole thing down, and it's just adding a neat glow. And when you do it like this and you have a color underneath your painting, it can harmonize all of the colors in the painting. It's like having a mother color under everything, so that in the little gaps that you see the blue comes through, and the same thing will happen in the water and the little rocks that I put up there. So it just kind of will sort of overall harmonize the entire thing, so I don't have to worry as much about creating color harmonies on my palette, although I am thinking about it. But having that color underneath does sort of assist in that overall harmonization. And there is my white, so you can see how much brighter that looks. In comparison, and this is where I can go quite a bit thicker also on some of these areas of fur that are coming across his brow here. And I will say that the paint that's under this now, it's getting sort of tacky dry, so I can still blend into it, but I can also sort of have these colors take their place, I guess you could say. And I'm trying to follow where the fur clumps are going more than individual hairs here. And I'm just using the angle of my brush here to create some of these little stray hairs that are coming up over this darker area of the nose. And it was still wet, so I've got some grays mixing in here, but that's okay. Because if I need to come and lighten this afterwards, I can do it with straight white when it's dry. So the name of the game here is loose painting. I'm not trying to get lost in detail. I'm trying to keep things fairly expressive, larger brush moves. As you can see, I'm holding the brush fairly far back. Some artists would probably tell me I'm not even that far enough, but for me this is really far. And I'm standing away from the canvas. I don't normally stand at this angle. I would normally stand sort of here. This is a bit of a strain on my shoulder, but I need for you to see it, and I don't want to be in the way of the camera. So I would say standing posture should be more like this, and I like to keep my elbow in a bit to my body just because this is really tiring and this will sort of save all of these muscles here. But I need you to see it. So I'm taking a hit for the team, but if you see me doing this, you don't need to stand like me off to the side. You can find a more comfortable position. It's like light hitting up here. It's going to turn dark pretty quickly under here, but since I have this light color on my brush, I can go ahead and drop this in. I may go back over some of these edges at the end after I paint the background in, because I can sort of adjust my edge to the old edge and then just put some little furs back over it. So I'm just kind of, like I said, this is a block in right now. I'm trying to work it enough that I don't need to go back over it too much, because if you touch things more than once, obviously they take longer, and we are kind of going for an optimal workflow here. I do like to get these finished and out into the public so they can be seen, because they're not doing anything in my living room. And I'm just hoping that I can get them out there so anyone who might enjoy this painting will get to see it. And then if I manage to work more quickly, that means I can move on to more paintings. And here I'm just filling in the canvas. There's a lot of blue coming through. That's fine. I am still thinking about the direction of these little hairs and the way they're traveling, just so my brush strokes work with the concept and not against it. Cool. starting to take form. That is a very big polar bear. Cool. This is my first time painting something like this. I'm quite excited, actually. I've painted wildlife in a painterly style small at like a 11 by 14 size, or like 8 by 10 size, or even a 6 by 6 I did. But this is my first time painting something so loose and so large on an animal, and I'm really enjoying this process. This is a whole lot of fun. This eye needs a whole lot of work. I'm probably going to go in with some spot glazes on some of these transition areas here. Although I may be able to pick up a bit of dark right now and just sort of gently darken them. They're not quite the right value right now. It's hard to test right away when you've got a colored value ground. All these strokes need to be coming up this way, so I'm going to adjust this right now to get this moving over that orbital eye, or orbital bone here. I don't really want them going in the wrong direction, or it will kill my volumes. Better, and then I'm going to take another brush because this is light and I want some darks on here. And I'm going to add some black to the brush. There is a lot of paint in here that is light, but that's okay for now. I just need to darken down over here a little bit. And I'm going to go upwards and drag this up in the direction that the fur is going. And I'm going to bring back in some of these little bits that kind of help show direction. There we go, and let me see, I think this color is a bit dark, but we can kind of live. Let me see, where am I here? That one? Yeah, okay. Bring some dark in here a little bit. I had said that this was too light before, and I was right. So I'm going to darken in here a little bit. And sort of help to define the shape here. And I'm going to add some of my blue to this and some white to brighten it up a little bit. actually need a bit of a highlight in that little area coming up there. The lip kind of like curves back out a little. So I want to add some slightly warmer highlights in there. This is all getting a little bit too warm for my liking, so I'm going to add a little bit more blue and a bit of manganese blue. A little bit more manganese. There we go. This is where you're kind of watching me fail a little bit. These values aren't really great right now. I'm not turning the form enough. It's not really obvious here, but I can see it when I'm standing up here. So it's just something, it's not really failing. I say it's failing. I'm not hitting the mark like right away. I'm not like nailing it as I'm doing it. There's always a process that happens, and I think sometimes when we're learning how to paint, we hit those little robot blocks where we're like kind of obviously failing at what we're doing. And then so a lot of people tend to get sort of freaked out and think that they're not good and then kind of give up. But you just have to remember that it's a process and just notice where you sort of missed the mark on something, and then we can come back later. I'm gonna have to let this dry though before I can come back and fix these things. But that's why I like to keep moving or keep moving with other projects in the meantime. But definitely like all is not lost here. So we can definitely go back and address this later. And it's just that, you know, my marks aren't really nice. This is way too light for what it is in here. I need to really kind of darken this to help that shadow effect that's coming from the nose because it's turning under. So there's like shadow being cast here and I'm missing it. So we will get back into that later. It's not a big deal. You just have to recognize. I'm just like more focused on, at least in this area right now, getting paint down and getting some brush marks down. That was totally the wrong color, and I just put it on there because it was on my brush. I wasn't paying attention. That's fine though. I will fix it. Again, I will fix it. I try to not make errors so that, because when you have to fix things a lot, it wastes time. But you know, it's part of the fun. It's like a slightly challenging puzzle. I want to make sure that these furs here are falling back down over his nose. They're coming up and then back down here. So I'm following those shapes to come around here. I have to darken in this little area too to help deepen that little shadow. got way too warm there. But I do like this color for this little area here. Just darken this up a little bit to help bring this around. Really try to follow the shape of the bear's head here to get volume and, yeah, volume, turning the form. Some sort of transition stuff happening up in here. So when I sketch this out, I just kind of do an area of where the light or the shadow happens. I'm not going into detail, I just have like a line here. But there's actually a lot of like hairs and things over. But I'm not bothering drawing all of that detail in. It's just a cue to myself of where my highlights start and stop. So I'm going to have to build up more volume in this area too. Because right now it's a bit flat. So I do that obviously with value and temperature shifts. A little bit darker behind that orbital eye there. Just in here, just to make that sort of pop a little bit more. The roundness in there. And just kind of allowing some of these hairs to start coming a little bit more in this direction. And I've just missed a little bit of paint in here. Fill this in. And here too, I'm just gonna start letting some of this. There needs to be some highlights on here right now, but I can like just put the shadows in for now. That was a mistake, but I will fix it later. Actually, I don't hate those brush strokes. Sometimes things look good and you're not expecting them to. So just continue with some fur movements in these little areas here. In the shadows. For kind of going cool in this transition area, and then actually I'm going to keep it cool because it starts turning under into the water, but I'm going to lighten it a little bit where it comes around. A little bit of white on here. Just add a bit of highlight in there. Then I'm going to head up to the nose here because I think these colors are pretty correct now. Not bad. Yep, not bad. I'll have to lighten it for the outer part, but this is good for continuing in the shadows. And then I'm going to come over here and do this side. There's more brown on this side, a little bit, it's a bit warmer. So I'm going to add some warmer fur. Again, as you see, I just drew out the basic shape of where light falls. Sort of just like a massing. I'm going to fill in the gaps when I'm painting. I know, like, I hear a lot of questions or talk online, or even shaming about tracing onto your canvas from your reference. And I would just say, don't feel ashamed if you want to do that. A lot of people do it. Even professional concept artists in the game industry and film, they use a lot of references, and they do a lot of photo bashing. Obviously, they need to make sure they have the rights to use those photos for photo bashing, or there's legal troubles. But if you have the right to use your photograph or your drawing, obviously you have the right to use your drawing, feel free to trace it. You will be practicing your drawing skills and everything else as you paint anyways. You're practicing your observation skills. Eventually you'll just get better and better. It is still really good to sit down and sketch in black and white because that really helps push your sort of ability to analyze images and values and shapes and all those things. But definitely don't be afraid to trace things on your canvas, especially if you're going from a small sketch to a very large canvas. It is hard to just translate that. And you can, there's a lot of tricks too. You can grid things out and a whole bunch of other things if you feel like maybe it's more authentic for you, or if you feel guilty or cheating, like if you're projecting things, then definitely by all means use other tricks. But just do you, and you'll improve in your way, and you'll have your own working methods. I like to sketch on my tablet and then project it on large canvases, just because it's the workflow that works easiest for me, and I do like a certain level of accuracy, and I don't like to rework things too many times. So that's my way of sort of avoiding a lot of time that I could spend making errors on things when I've already worked out the issues on my iPad. So that's my 2 cents for projecting and tracing. I need to add some whites to this mixture because now I'm getting into those highlighted areas. Not quite highlighted, it's a transition area. and it does go a bit warmer, or a bit lighter. It's still fairly gray though, tilty. So I'm going to go back in and add some highlights on here later and fix my fur directions. But so far I've got a fairly decent lock-in of color. I'm going to come immediately though and just kind of fix these little tucks that come this way. This I need to darken. I'm noticing I went too late on it initially. It actually should be a lot warmer. I'm going to add more burnt sienna in there. This is literally the part of the painting where I'm like, why isn't the whole canvas full of paint yet? It just starts to feel like it drags. It's still fun, I'm still having fun, but it does start feeling like it drags, and you just have to push through these moments. I'm not gonna lie, it starts to drag. It actually hasn't been that long if you think about it. think I filmed for an hour in the first video. And then this is probably going to come up on like 2 hours. And we've got a huge chunk of the head done. And then we can move on to something else. Sometimes if I get too bored, I will just move on to another section so that I'm not stopping. Or right now I'm filming, but another thing that I do for some of these long painting stretches, I will throw on like a podcast or something to listen to, an audiobook, just so my brain is a little bit occupied while I'm doing all of this smearing of paint on the surfaces. This needs to go way darker. I need to go cooler here, so I'm going to stop there. It almost turns green and what I've got sketched out here, so sort of respect that. Okay, anything else dark on here that I'm looking for? Just gonna do some stuff. Sort of coming in here. In the way, I think. There we go. So the bear's paw is obviously under the water here. So we don't really see it, it's being deformed completely, but we do see the color carry a little bit. So there's color shifts in there that indicate that the paw is under the water. I just have some of this on my brush, so I'm just gonna throw it up into here. slowly getting there. There is a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of value and saturation, but I will come back to that. I want to just sort of get to the rest of the head. I just want this bear's head to be done. At least the first pass. And then I will move on to something else. I'm going to come back and do the eyes after. Let's see. Some water dripping from his chin. Or maybe it's a her, I don't know. But I want to make sure that I leave that space for that. Okay, more weight and more yellow in here. There's so many colors on my brush right now. That's alright though, let them sort of auto mix on my canvas. Okay, getting there. So getting there. My arm is killing. This is part of the thing with this right now. My arm is just aching. It's really hard on the shoulders. I think I'm actually gonna book myself in for a massage soon. That's something that people don't realize. This is not, people always think being a full-time artist is fun all the time, and there's so many advantages, really. So many advantages, but it's also really hard on the body. Really, really hard on the body. Again, always trying to follow the direction that the fur goes with my strokes. Trying to build up texture in the correct direction, even if it's subtle texture. More blue. This is too warm right now. Maybe cool gray. And then it transitions into warmer grays. And I'm going to add some more highlights in there a little bit. It's not quite as bright as the rest, but it is. Some lighter fur coming in here. So I'm gonna have to go back over this. It went way too warm on me, but it's just underpainting, so I'm not super concerned right now. But I'm gonna have to go back and cool those highlights. I'm gonna switch my brush. I think I've got a cooler brush here. Slowly getting there. Alright, there's some face here to do. Down here. So I took a quick impromptu break because my mummy called and it's her 70th birthday today, so happy birthday, mummy. What a milestone to reach 70, that is so impressive. Not everyone gets to get there, and I know there's all these talks about aging and all these struggles with aging, but seriously, to get to 70, 80, 90, 100, we need to celebrate that and the beauty of that because not everybody gets to turn 70, so good job, Mom. Super impressed with that one. Alright, so I'm gonna get back to work. I'm starting to get that like ADHD brain. I'm just done with this today. I always have to struggle through this a little bit. I'm filming, so I'm not doing it, but normally I would put on a podcast and then I can push through for a few more hours, but my brain is getting very restless. This is where I also start making mistakes. So I'm partly doing this because I want to push forward for you guys to get it done, and I do want to finish this painting, but sometimes I find it better to actually just take a real break and just step away for a while. And I do have, talking about building art business, full-time freelance art business. I have some rendering contracts coming in and I have to send a proposal for my clients just for pricing of what they've requested. So I'm going to get on that right after I finish painting this today. So we will continue jumping in with this, and I've lost my reference. Seconds. And I totally forget where I was, which is why I was rambling just now, and I just remembered. So, yeah, trying to get this little bit of face locked in. Whoa, that is thick. I like it though. I'm enjoying, I've been using acrylics for so long. I've been in a strata situation with shared plumbing and everything, and I didn't want to be cleaning brushes in shared plumbing just in case, you know, it blocks stuff up. So I've been using acrylic, and also it's just a really small space. 600 square feet for my husband, dog, and I. So we've just moved, but I did discover these water-soluble oils, which allow a water cleanup, and it's not really actually any different because it's just linseed oil. It's not actually really any different than cleaning dishes. So cook with olive oil all the time, which is a sort of similar oil. this is where the fur starts getting a bit stringy. Because it's wet. Move over a little bit, sorry. I have to keep reminding myself as I learn how to film these for you guys. I'll probably take a thinner brush later and really sort of fix some edges on here, just to make it look nice and wet and stringy. I'm nitpicking. It's bad. I'm gonna grab another brush though. I need something really dark. So I'm just gonna grab another sort of smaller flat brush. It's a bit detaily, but I don't want any other paints on the brush on it. I have no idea where it was. Oh, it's in here. Okay. I've got a ton of black paint on my brush, and this needs to go really too much paint. This needs to go nice and dark in here, where the little lip kind of curves over. Again, kind of following the shapes and angles, just like cutting in. I'm trying to pick up some of the other paint from just above it and sort of blend it down into the darks here. This is curves under, but I want it to look like there's fur, but it also needs to be subtle, so I'm just kind of working with the paint that I have down here right now. The paint underneath is becoming dry enough that I can work over it, but still kind of pick it up. starting to look cool. It's always so satisfying when it starts revealing itself to you and sort of looking more and more like you wanted it to or envisioned it. Very fun. I left some little sort of round shapes down here to do like little drops of water coming off his fur. I'm actually going to come back up here on this eye a little bit. It's not quite accurate right now, and it's bugging me. It's a bit small, it's not dark enough. I've lost volume. No, fix that later. This can go darker. I'm gonna fix it later. Guys, I think we did it. I think we put a first pass on his face. So we're looking at his funnel these out, so I'm gonna grab my lighter brush because I need a bit of a warm color just for up in here. I'm just checking value right now. And that was a bit too chunky white, so darkening it a little bit. And the body is much warmer. And it's pretty big brush stroke, so I think I'm just gonna dive in. Because why not? And then I will call it a day for this piece. So I'm just gonna, that's pretty good. Actually, just start, get some darker color down here in the brush already. This is partly why I keep separate brushes, because I can use what's in like the body of the brush if there's a bunch of paint stuck in there. The water is going to be fun. It's very smeary. The body here too is quite simple. I'm just using what's on my brush and what's already on the canvas here to get these little areas moving and blending. I really have to stop. I can't do anymore. I'm going to start running. I'm going to get very impatient with it. I just go through these little ebbs and flows during the day. It's quite fatiguing to stand here and do this for hours. So it's part of the game. But, I mean, this is pretty cool, right? So you just like the amount of satisfaction that you get from, you know, tackling something of this size and working through it and ending up with the result that you can sort of be proud of and love. Super worth the long pain. So I will take another break and I will see you guys in the studio on another day. I am working at the art studio tomorrow, so it'll be in a couple days probably that I upload something else. But I hope you enjoyed this so far and you got something out of this particular video, and I can't wait to see you guys in the studio again soon. Take care.